This
Carl.
conference will now be recorded.
Welcome, Mr. Brent. Is Mr. Brent there?
Muted, Mr. Chair. I don't know if he realizes that, but
Okay, well, let's go ahead. Other than Mr. Brent, I don't see anybody from the public, so we don't
I'm
need to
here.
call for.
I'm Kimberly Brent.
I'm here, Mr. Cameron, as well.
Oh, okay. All right, good. And Paul, see Paul there, Paul Roberts.
Yes, sir.
Any public comments, Paul, before we start the agenda?
No, sir, but thank you for asking.
March, do you have any comments?
The only thing that I have to comment on is that you have a long list of things to consider today. And so I'm not going to take up any more time than is absolutely necessary. You have announced that the fact that we have a resignation beforehand, so we'll have to find a replacement for Mr. Leopold.
All right, you got a lot of feedback there, Arch. I don't know what that's from.
I don't either.
All right. Okay, well, let's go ahead and first item on the agenda in the business section is a variance request number 21-1813, an application for an additional driveway at 21654 Boggy Ford Road, submitted by the Bretts. I have seen comments from the city. Would you like to make any other comments, Roy, before we talk to the Bretts?
no, sir, not unless anybody has any questions.
Is this the time where I'm one of the Brents that's trying to get this variance? We're both on here. Is this where we would speak, or do we just wait? I'm not sure.
Well, I was going to ask for your comments after Mr. Jambor, but he had none. So you may go ahead, Ms. Brett. Are you ready, Ms. Brett? Go ahead.
Oh, she's muted.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
I was talking and I was muted. I was just wondering. I didn't understand what you said, whoever was talking, if now is when we would make like our statement about why we want to do this, or if we wait. I don't know how these meetings work.
All right. Well, what I had said was I had asked the city if they had any comments, and Roy, who was representing the city, did not. So then I asked for your comments. This was your time to speak.
Oh, okay. Well, my husband and I submitted for a permit for this driveway a month or two ago, whenever we submitted for it, and we're needing a variance because the width of our driveway that's in the approach obviously meets the maximum that the city allows, and we're on a corner lot, as you can see in the drawing or in our survey, and we are, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Boggy Ford Interstate that we live on, but it's terrible pulling in and out of here. We have 3 small children, and every time we pull out of our driveway, it's like Russian roulette for us. And so we were wanting to put a driveway that would give us ingress and egress out to Oregon Lane, and the contractor that drew our plan proposal, he just kind of willy-nilly threw it on the paper. And in our letter that we wrote that is attached to this packet, we're stating that one of the things that the city engineer had said that he wasn't happy with was our existing driveway which was done by the builders of the home, not us, that they made their own modification to the driveway against what they had submitted to the city. And as you can see in our letter, we're questioning why at this point they being the city, are wanting us to modify that when the certificate of occupancy was granted when we were closing on our home. And so now we're kind of wondering, well, okay, because we're trying to get access to Oregon Lane, the road that we're on the corner of, for not only safe ingress and egress of our property, but for additional parking as well. The city engineer and Roy had come back saying that we should demolish the end of our driveway now in order to put that in. And I see no logical sense in that. Nobody that we've talked to sees logical sense in that. And I'm not sure if that's just an attempt to rectify a situation that maybe is happening throughout Lago Vista that you guys are trying to clean up. But this was done in 2018 is when it was poured. And we bought our home in the very beginning of 2019. And so, you know, this issue has been there since the home was constructed. And now all we're trying to do is just add out to the side. And the only problem the city engineer had with that was just our our driveway that was modified from the builder of the home, which was Emery Custom Homes.
I believe that you said in your letter that the city's alternate decision or proposal of B was acceptable to you. Is that correct?
What was that? I'm sorry.
In your letter, I think I read that you were amenable to the alternate decision by the city, alternate B. Is that correct?
We're not amendable to, I'm sorry. It's lagging on my end if I interrupted you. I'm sorry, but we're not wanting to demolish our existing driveway. We have a 26-foot boat that needs to be parked appropriately on our property as well. And per city ordinance, it needs to be on concrete as well. So demolishing the front half of our driveway because they're not happy with how it was initially done and they checked off on it is not something that we are open to doing. And that's why we're wanting the variance.
I'd like to ask Roy a question.
Yes, sir.
Roy, in decision B, I don't see anything about demolishing any of the old driveway.
No, sir.
Was your intent to?
No,
I beg your pardon?
Well, let me make 2 points. First of all, there's only 25 feet behind their garage before you get to the property line. That 25 feet is necessary to back out of the garage. The only property available to park a boat on is in the public right of way, and that's not their property. So our question is if the failure to remove that portion of the driveway is to park a boat, it's illegal to do so in that location. We are, by including an alternate with those stipulations, it's not that we're recommending that you do so, but if you're inclined to do so, we would recommend that as opposed to, you know, granting it with no conditions. That good. Are you understanding, or do I? You know, it's like I said, that we're not saying that the city engineer is wrong. We're saying that if you think he's wrong, at least keep these conditions in there.
I'm not following what you're saying. We're saying the city engineer is wrong. Can you explain that a little bit better, Roy?
No, ma'am. If the board has a question, I'll answer them.
I'd like to ask a question, if I could. It sounded like the reason for this variance request on the form that I read was because of the safety of entering Boggy Ford. And but I'm also hearing now about the need to have room to park a 26-foot boat. So is the purpose of this variance to create additional pavement area to park the boat, or is it to resolve the safety issue?
It would accomplish both. And when I had contacted Roy, I had told him that there wasn't enough lines on the application for me to write all of the reasons that we would want it. I mean, I could start listing that I want a safe space for my kids to ride their scooters instead of a sloped driveway toward a 30-mile-an-hour road. And when I wrote my additional letter, I explained those things, and that's been submitted in the packet. I guess I don't understand where that got lost.
It's in the packet.
It is in the package.
I
It's very eloquent, I might add.
where I'm headed is, if safety is one of the major reasons for this variance, it would seem like everyone has agreed, including the Brents, that they don't need to be using that drive onto Boggy Ford to enter or exit their property. Is that right?
Yeah, the city has no objection to that. We do have the objection to park a boat in it, however, or on it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if safety is the concern, or is a concern about this, then the drive entering Boggy Ford should not be the one that's used. Is that right?
Yeah,
If we were
The,
going to
the,
be parking our boat on our property as well, we would be parking it on the addition. Roy has brought up a couple times that it would be parked in the right of way, and if we are granted the variance for the addition, that's where the boat would go. We can, I mean, if the problem is with a 12-foot wide driveway that he believes that we're not going to be able to get around it, I believe that we are, but we are also able to, add a foot of concrete if that's what's needed. The ability to also be able to pull through our driveway is also something that is appealing to us too. And while we are talking in the name of safety, that is like our front running concern. But mind you, we've been pulling in and out of this driveway for over 2 years now. And so, eliminating that driveway at this point, like, we've been living with it. So ultimately, if this gets denied, we're still living with this issue. And
but
if we're granted,
you want to keep both driveways live, both onto Oregon and onto Boggy Ford. Is that right?
yes, in a perfect world, we would be granted both driveways. It would serve more than just a safety purpose. That's just our primary purpose, which I think is what was asked on the application.
Okay,
Howard
thank
has
you.
a question.
Yeah, I
Howard?
have a question. It seems to me like we have two different issues here. The parking the boat, that's something between the city and the owners. If they park in the right of way, then they'll be given a citation for that. The other part of this is safety, okay, so that they can exit and egress and ingress on off of Oregon rather than Boggy Ford. I don't see how it makes any difference for the kids, because the kids can go on Oregon Lane anyway, but without going on Boggy Ford. But I don't see how that helps. That addition helps there. But in any case, to me, that just seems like there's two different issues here. The boat, okay, which is if it's parked illegally, then they'll be cited for it. And then there's the safety issue, which is a completely different issue. So, Roy, can you talk to that? I mean,
Yes,
I
sir.
don't. I'm still having a problem understanding this.
Well, let me make it as simple as I know how. The city engineer's comments don't include his knowledge of anything involving a boat at all. He wanted the driveway removed because to leave it and to use it is unsafe.
Okay, that makes sense.
Roy, I have a question. Where is the right of way? At what point does the old driveway cross the right of way?
25 feet behind the garage.
Is that the red line on the drawing?
I believe it is. Let me get to that there drawing.
It's on page 16.
Yeah. Yes, sir. The red line is the property line.
I see.
And as you can probably see,
Brad?
the offset
Go
is
ahead.
probably the result of trying to miss a tree in the right of way. That's my guess.
Yeah, the addition driveway looks a little weird. I mean, I would, I guess I would have curved it more toward away from Boggy Ford and more toward Oregon rather than having it curved toward Boggy Ford.
Well, and that's one of the things we addressed in the stipulations, Howard, was the way it's drawn is not acceptable either, but that's what the conditions address,
Okay.
to make sure it stays as far away from that intersection as minimally safe. And I assure you that what Eric said is minimal.
Okay, Jim has a question. Jim?
You're muted, Mr.
Can't
Casey.
hear you. Can't hear you, Jim.
Okay, question for the applicant. How long did you say the boat was?
It's 26 feet. And so, yeah, I don't know how.
With the trailer tongue and everything, there's no way that you can legally park that boat in the existing driveway. That would you agree to that?
Correct. Yeah, we would not be able to. And so,
So
like,
then you would be parking it on the new addition that you want, which would put you right back into backing out of that existing driveway. And I agree with you. That is a safety hazard. You got a blind curve. I came off of Oregon and felt like I needed to pop out there
yes.
boggy in a hurry in case there was anybody coming around that curve. So
Right.
I agree
Right.
you have a problem. But in probably your addition is a solution to it. But you're not going to be able to park that boat there. So,
oops, sorry.
In order to get that addition for safety purposes, you're just going to have to forego parking the boat. I mean, I don't see any other, and I do find it kind of ironic too that we, gave you a variance to move your fence out, which is also going to create more hazard for you coming out on the Oregon Drive. In case anybody's coming down Oregon. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I can't, and maybe that's why the city engineer was so intent on, making that driveway unusable, so we didn't end up with a boat on the new addition and you being right back in the same safety situation with the existing driveway.
We are, on our proposal, we had written out for a 12-foot wide addition, and the boat is not 12 feet wide. And there is room in our budget to be able to expand the width of it if that's what's going to make you guys understand clearer. I know also you brought up the point of how it's not going to change for the safety of our children, but we're the ones who live on the property with the children, and when they get on their scooters in the driveway, their only option is to go down towards a very swift moving road that nobody does the speed limit on. And if they had the ability to ride their scooter an extra 10 feet down the driveway and turn around and be heading towards a road that has minimal traffic compared to Boggy Ford, then, you know, that makes me feel so much safer. And also our fence being on our property line, pulling our vehicle out, there is enough space in the easement and the curvature of the road, which when you are traveling down it curves slightly to the left right after our property, that I don't believe that it imposes a safety concern. And we can see absolutely clearly. And when our variance was granted for our fence, the only thing that they made us do because of safety was the back corner needed to be at an angle, which with the curvature of the road didn't serve much of a purpose, but we did what was asked of us. And now here we are asking for a variance for a driveway after complying with what was accepted on our fence. And I don't believe that it serves a safety hazard being where it's at.
No, I know. I just find it's ironic that we granted that variance and moved it out, and it's I mean, it's more of a hazard now than it was, but I agree, it's not that big a hazard. But still, I don't, you know, I just don't see any way you're going to park the boat there. And
Mrs. Brandt, have you considered storing the boat in boat storage?
We function on a sole income, and we cannot afford to store the boat in storage. And my question to you guys is, with a 12-foot wide driveway, where is the confusion that a vehicle and a boat cannot fit on that? Because my neighbors have multiple vehicles and a boat in their driveway with room to spare. And so I'm failing to see why this is such a problem.
I think the problem is not with the width, it's with the length from, you know, from your garage to your property line is about 25 foot, I think. I just measured it on Google Earth. I don't know, but so if you've got a 26-foot boat and, you know, another 3 foot of tongue on the trailer, you're going to be in the public right of way. And you can't, you know, store a boat in the public right of way. It'll be off of your property.
The addition that we're asking for the variance on is supposed to be a 12-foot by 50-foot in length addition. And so if the easement is, you know, I don't remember correctly, maybe for being on a corner lot, we have additional right of way. But even if it was 15 feet, that still is longer than the length of the boat if we were going to be parking the boat on the addition.
Oh, you're saying you want the addition will accommodate parking the boat plus getting your car in and out?
That's what I was, yes, that's what I was saying, is the 12-foot wide is wide enough for our boat to be parked there and for us to get in and out of our driveway. But again, like I said, we've been using our driveway for over 2 years now. And so we would probably still, when needed, use that driveway to exit and enter our home. It wouldn't be us permanently for the rest of time exiting only onto Oregon. So like I said, the main purpose is for additional safety to be able to pull out and not have to do 100 miles an hour out of the driveway sometimes. It's not the only purpose.
Yeah. Well, just in fairness, it's not unsafe to enter there. It's just unsafe to exit.
Correct. Yes. And sometimes we don't have someone coming 50 miles an hour down the road, but the way that Boggy Ford is designed is the mailboxes and the neighbors' cars and the trees and the slight curve of the road when we're pulling out. It is scary sometimes. But I just want to continue to emphasize that safety is not the only reason that we are wanting the addition.
If I could follow up on what what Commissioner Kaysen was asking, if the new drive is used to accommodate the boat, it really is not going to be available very often, will it, to use for ingress and egress from the property?
I don't have the exact dimensions of the boat, but I know that it's not 12 feet wide. And I would assume that my husband, being who he is, would have the boat parked as far to one side of the driveway, and so that we could use the other side. And I can look up the dimensions of the boat, but there's a maximum width, isn't there, for DOT, that it can't be wider than, what, 8 feet to be on the road? So worst case is we have to extend the width of the driveway, and that's something that, we can flex in our budget and work with our contractor if the variance is granted to be able to get extra width. But that is where we would be wanting to park our boat, is in the addition, tight to one side, and hopefully continue to utilize the other side, because like I think Jim was saying, that entering the driveway is fine, exiting, it's Russian roulette.
So, if I look at this drawing, surely if the little sidewalk that you have going around to the front of your house, I mean, if you incorporated that sidewalk in your driveway coming straight out to Oregon, you could get enough, like you say, you could get enough width out of it to park the boat on the inside, pull your car in, outside of it, get in your garage. I can, but I
Okay,
think
Howard, are you through, Jim?
Are you done, Kaysen?
Well, no, I was just going to say what I would want to see before I could vote on it is a good drawing done by your contractor that shows exactly where that driveway is going to be and how wide it's going, all the dimensions.
I just looked up, Scott, I just looked up the average width of a 26-foot boat, and it's 7 to 8 feet. That's average. So let's just take 7 feet. That only leaves you 5 feet. I don't think you can get a car past there, because most cars are going to be wider than 7 feet. I mean, by 5 feet. So even if the boat is only 7 foot wide for a 26-foot boat, that only leaves you 5 feet. And I don't think that you can get past that boat without driving on the lawn.
Kimberly, why Why is the driveway 12 feet wide?
I didn't hear what question you just asked, but I looked up the dimensions of our car, and our car is 6.8 feet wide. So if we added an addition in width, like Jim Kaysen was saying, and incorporating more towards our property of concrete, then we would be able to safely pass the boat. That was, I saw that you had made the comment about the drawing of our contractor and how it's kind of just drawn on there, and away he went. And we're willing to adjust the drawing and make sure that the dimensions are on there that would make it wide enough that our car could pass by and have the boat park there. And when we had first got the quote for the contractor, we were trying to just stay within a budget, and I wasn't thinking of how wide my boat was and how wide my car was. And so that's not something that we're opposed to doing. We're open to doing that if that would make it so that our variance would be approved.
Yeah, so I was just looking at it, and if you went from the inside of that sidewalk over to your property line, you can probably get 16 foot. And you wouldn't have to bring that 16 foot all the way out. I mean, you could squeeze it back to 12 foot, when you got near the road, or when you got off of where you came off of your property line. You have room to get your car around, get your boat parked.
Howard,
if they widen the driveway, okay, so that it stayed inside their property and bent it away from Boggy Ford, I wouldn't have as much of a problem with this, and then took out the rest of the other driveway toward Boggy Ford, because if I agree that if that part of the driveway stays, it still creates a safety issue. It still creates a safety issue. So, I understand why the engineer is saying that part of the driveway between the property line and Boggy Ford needs to be removed. And I would actually take this driveway and sweep it away from Boggy Ford. It's going to make it easier to get into the garage if you do that.
Mr. Chair, let me remind you that if the other driveway is removed, they don't need a variance at all. We would permit it that way.
well,
I have a question on why the demolition of our driveway would be pertinent now. If you guys were concerned about safety, it should have been addressed when they were requesting the CO to our property and when the driveway was built, because if the contractor who built our home went against what he submitted to the city, that was an issue that should have been addressed then, not now after 2 years of a family pulling in and out of there.
It's not a safety issue for one driveway. It's a safety issue with both of them.
would you explain that to me, Roy?
The fact that the contractor didn't follow his own drawings, we surmise is because of the tree being there that he failed to plan for. The driveway as it is not unsafe except for Boggy Ford. There's nothing about the geometry of the driveway that violates our standards. What violates our standards is having two driveways that near an intersection.
Oh,
That's the issue. Like I said, if they'll demo the other driveway, we offered to refund their variance. And before they applied, and just said, here's a way you can do it. Widen it all you want for your boat. Just take the other driveway out and everything's fine.
would demolition of just the intersection to Boggy Ford be adequate
It could be,
to?
it could be only have to be demolished after it crosses their property line. The part that's on their property can stay there. In fact, we kind of recommended they pour a little bit to the north so they could use it to turn around and drive straight out instead of backing out.
Yeah.
It's still not clear to me though why two driveways near an intersection are unsafe when the city engineer said that if we demolished, pardon me, our existing driveway, that we can put the new one 10 feet from the intersection. That almost is confusing to me and conflicting in the name of safety. And if we're agreeing to turn our driveway and have it come even farther away from the intersection, I don't understand how that imposes even higher of a safety hazard.
Well, I mean, Scott, I have a question again. Well, the
Let Roy answer. Let Roy answer that question.
To the applicant, you're the one that has complained about the traffic coming down Boggy Ford and the safety of having to pull out onto Boggy Ford. So what we're doing is we're saying that if that part of the driveway stays, you still have a safety issue. And you were the one that said that this is being done for safety reasons. So why would you have a problem demolishing or taking out that part of the driveway?
Because like I stated earlier and in my letter and multiple times just on this conversation, it's not the sole purpose. It's not the only purpose of the addition of our driveway. It is the primary purpose, and continuing to be able to pull through our driveway if we so please, and to pull in and out of our driveway if we so please, like we have been doing for over 2 years now. That if we get the variance or not, we still are going to have that. Or if we're not granted the variance, we're still going to have that safety concern. So you deny the variance and we're still pulling out of an unsafe driveway. But the variance, if it gets granted, we have the ability to go out of Oregon and to pull into our driveway, because like Jim Kaysen said, pulling into our driveway is not a problem. Pulling out is a problem. And if our driveway is wide enough and the addition is able to accommodate both our car and our boat, I don't understand why we would have to demolish that driveway. It hasn't been a problem to you guys for 2 years. It wasn't a problem when it was checked off and inspected and allotted a certificate of occupancy. It's only a problem now because other property owners are doing things not under permit, doing things against permit, and that's what was allowed of our contractor. I don't know why it was done. I wasn't the one who did it. I didn't own the home. I didn't own the home until the beginning of 2019. I am trying to get access to the other road for multiple purposes. One of them is safety. But again, it is not the sole purpose. It is the primary purpose. It's not the sole purpose. There is other uses for our driveway, period.
And I will say that it's not uncommon in this town to have those pull-through driveways. Most of them are on one street, but there are some that are across corners like that. And I, to pull in off of Boggy and go out onto Oregon seems like a perfectly reasonable request to me.
Okay, Roy. You said it was illegal to have two driveways at a corner like this.
The law has to do with the space.
Is it true that other properties have this situation?
Oh, I don't doubt we have lots of unpermitted driveways that are this dangerous or worse. There's absolutely no doubt. The issue is not the fact that it's necessarily just an intersection. It has to do with the spacing from the corner. There are lots of factors involved. This is the through street. It's not a little cul-de-sac with 3 or 4 lots on it with limited traffic. All of those are factors. But, it is a fact that both the Green Book and the Austin Transportation Design Criteria, say this is not to be permitted absent a variance. So, this idea that everything's fine and that's just not true. The reality is, that if they remove the driveway onto Boggy Ford, they don't need a variance at all. They just need a building permit. And it's not the discretion of the city that's saying it needs a variance. These are standards that come from other cities and engineering manuals, not us.
All right.
I don't have still an understanding on how it's unsafe to have 2 driveways near an intersection. I have in an email and in the addition on the packet of the letter. It was where the city engineer said, and Roy Jamber had told us in an email as well, that we could have the new driveway 10 feet from the intersection with the demolition of our existing driveway. So if we're going to have the new driveway farther than 10 feet from the intersection, I'm still failing to see where it is unsafe or where he's saying that this makes even more of an unsafe condition. If, like I stated before, the contractor just, willy-nilly threw where in proximity our driveway would be, but I'll go out there with a tape measure and measure, 30 feet away if that's what's going to make you guys happy. But again, I don't see how that creates more of an unsafe situation.
Okay, Jim.
Roy, what is the required distance from an intersection?
Well, typically it's 50 feet, but let's say she had 2 12-foot driveways.
Yeah.
And this was not a violation of the standard. 50 feet spacing is what we would be looking for from the intersection. One of them could be less, but the other one would have to be 50 feet.
So, but, okay, what you read a minute ago, you said that it could not be permitted without a variance, right? I mean,
This.
it would be legal for us to grant this variance, right?
Absolutely. And if you do grant it, we would ask you to at least impose those conditions.
Which condition?
The ones in alternate decision B. But
Okay.
90 degrees hitting the pavement, at least 10 feet from the intersection, the straight pins extended, if you will. All that.
Okay.
I see an absence of demolition in option B.
Right. That was the point. If demolition means she goes home, you deny it. You follow me? We offered to permit it with the demolition. If she demolishes the other driveway, she can just simply get a permit. There would be no violation of city standards.
I see. So the only reason for the variance would be to leave the old driveway and install a new driveway under those conditions you asked for. Is that correct?
If you approve it, we would appreciate those conditions, please.
All right.
Roy, if she decides to demolish the driveway and put in the other driveway, they don't need a variance. Would they get their feedback for the variance?
Well, I offered it before we went to this hearing.
Okay.
I don't think I can offer it after the fact.
Okay.
Okay, but the other condition I would have in there is that the new driveway is of such a width and length that you can get a boat on it and get a car by it. Otherwise,
Right.
you're
Well,
just
but
gonna,
what they do on their own property, Mr. Kaysen, that's not a violation. If they don't
No.
need a variance for that.
but
But
well,
yeah, you should
but
remind
I'm
them to
saying
do.
that I'm not inclined to grant the variance unless I can see a drawing that shows me the driveway is going to be wide enough to accommodate a boat and a car.
Well, I agree with you because the boat is certainly disturbing to us that it might end up in the right of way otherwise.
Yeah. So I don't know how to do this, but I mean,
Oh, the condition you're asking for is simply to approve it, subject to a revised drawing that includes not just those three conditions, but a fourth condition that shows where the boat's going to be parked.
okay.
And you can delegate it to staff to check that. It doesn't have to come back to you.
Okay.
Can I have clarification? I know it needs to be 90 degrees from the intersect of Oregon. And the other 2 points, Roy had said something about pins or something. I don't know what that means, but I need clarification on that just so I know what our checklist is.
Your property line, it consists of a curve. What you need to do is extend those lines and ignore the curve till they meet at a point. And that point needs to be 10 feet west of that intersection with Boggy Ford as a minimum. You've got it shown about 2 feet now. Needs to go about
Okay.
8 feet west.
Okay, thank you. And there was one more point. I don't have the email pulled up to see those points. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, the last one was that the 90-degree angle, you've got a portion of it now that crosses the front property line into the Boggy Ford right of way. The curve that everybody was talking about, curving it towards Boggy, we're saying you can't do that. We don't care if it curves the other way, but it can't curve towards Boggy and enter the Boggy Ford right of way ever.
Okay, understood that. Thank you.
Can I ask, is it an option for us to postpone a decision on this variance until we have the new drawings brought to us to actually look at, instead of voting to approve conditional without the new drawings in front of us?
Absolutely. It's up to you.
Do I hear a motion?
Well, I'll move that we postpone the final decision on this variance application until the applicant submits new drawings to reflect the conditions that we discussed tonight.
I second.
Howard?
Would you verbalize the one about the parking of the boat to make sure that gets in there on the record?
Yeah, that the drawing should indicate that it is safe to park both the boat and for a vehicle to pass to exit or enter the property.
Will that do it, Roy?
Yeah, if he just add the part that on the portion towards, Oregon Lane on the new driveway, that would be fine.
That the new
All right.
drive, okay.
Like the new driveway will include that accommodation, not the old one.
Got that, Mr. Secretary?
I think so.
Okay, we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Do we have a vote? All those in favor, raise their hands so I can see them. Uh, That's 4, 5, okay. The motion passes. All right. That subject is complete for this meeting, and I guess we'll revisit it at another meeting. The next
Can I
item on the
ask one
agenda.
last question? Roy, or maybe it wasn't Roy, maybe it was Jim asking if this could be submitted and it could be reviewed by someone in office versus us waiting another month to present this and talk about it again.
That was discussed, but that was not the motion that was adopted.
I'm not sure what the process would be for addressing a resubmission on the application outside of the standard meetings. You guys will have to help on that.
Yeah, you guys can call a special call meeting if you choose. That'll be up to the chair.
We can do that. We can call a special meeting to make it easier for the Brents to get their work taken care of. So we'll plan on that. Mrs. Brent, we'll let you know when we can get a meeting together after the application has been submitted and reviewed by the city.
All right. The key thing is get us the drawing as quickly as possible. And we can schedule the meeting as soon as you get it to us.
Roy,
Yeah.
would I submit the drawing to you via email again?
Yes, ma'am. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you. You guys have a good night.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, discussion about systems, policies, and procedures of contract licensing or registration. I assume everyone has had a chance to review the submitted documents from other cities. Is that correct? I have a few nods. Laura, would you like to say something, or do you want us to just start discussing?
Well, the only comment I really have, Mr. Chair, is I found the San Antonio to be the most complete. Now, whether their requirements may be stiffer than we want to do, it seemed like they had the most complete framework. And I don't remember what city it was, but I remember one of their websites had a link to a page that says how to hire a contractor. I was going to steal that too at some point.
I agree. I think the San Antonio was the most complete. Austin and Georgetown were just totally unacceptable to me.
Got a question, Paul Roberts. You muted, Paul.
Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I think I was raising my hand a little prematurely. I just wanted to make sure you saw it. I actually, if I may, I believe public comments are typically reserved until after staff presentation and then after your commission speaks. But I've done a little homework on this, and I think that what I can share with you, gentlemen, you'll find helpful. So if I may speak in public comments before, I would appreciate it.
Let's see. Roy, would you like to go ahead and speak first?
That was all I was going to say anyway, sir. I'm done.
Okay. All right. Any of the members of the commission have something they would like to say about this? Well, I'll tell you what, I review these in a cursory manner, and I personally thought San Antonio, as Roy said, was the most complete. However, it was a little verbose, and I would like to suggest that we take a look at it as a model that we could modify to make work here in Lago Vista. Comment?
I agree. This is Howard.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm on board with that. I think that's the right model to use.
Excuse me, was the San Antonio model the one that required continuing education?
I believe it does. I
Yeah.
don't remember exactly where it is.
Yeah, I think that's what
That's
it
my
was.
recollection as
Is that
well.
available readily through the community college things here in
It's available online through a number of sources.
I see.
Let me put it this way. I have lots of continuing education to do, and there's plenty of free online. McGraw-Hill, Architects Digest. I mean, anybody needs it. I'll post those on the website so that contractors can figure out how to do it without spending a dime if they don't want to.
Okay. All right. Do any other commissioners have Jim, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, Roy, if he could, you know, give us a little overview of how this is going to work. I mean, these guys are going to register with the state, but then they're going to have to provide their registration to the city.
Well, that applies to the mechanical, electrical, plumbing guys, because those guys already have to do that. You follow me? Those requirements are simply mimicking the existing state requirements, because those trades are already required to be licensed by the state.
Right. And so you're just somehow going to get a copy of their license on file?
Yeah, we already do that.
Okay.
We are required to verify that. We did have one guy use somebody else's credentials, and they got turned in, and we had to assist the state in prosecuting them. It was an electrician, but other than that, we've had no cheaters other than that one guy.
But it is incumbent upon us to include in whatever we come up with registration to the city, or
Right.
some sort of licensing measure that we can deny further activity if they're bad actors.
Yeah, and the insurance may be a little high in San Antonio compared to what we need in Lago, but the idea that, you know, we do have some minimum insurance is probably a good idea, because I can assure you there's some guys out there that don't have any, and that if, you know, they can do some serious damage to a neighboring property, and there'll be a problem.
I agree.
Okay. Okay, Paul, you want to speak?
Thank you for recognizing me. So I think I'm going to address a lot of the things all of you, several of you just brought up. First, let me say that like several of you, San Antonio one, they've got the best system here for us to model after. And, you know, you just heard in that last agenda item, you know, a reference to Emory Homes, another home builder out here that has had issues. One of the first things that jumps out at me is if you look in your packet at the top of the page number 27 of the packet. Give you a second there. I'm going to actually reference several different pages that I think everyone is going to like several pieces of language here that's going to address issues we're having in Lago. On page 27, underneath home improvement contractor,
I don't have page numbers.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cameron, what was that?
I don't have page numbers.
Oh, okay. If I'm looking online is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the packet on the city's website, and in the PDF reader at the very top, it shows that's where the page numbers are that I'm referencing, everyone.
Okay.
And you can go into there where it shows, for example, page 27 of 93. You can manually type in a number, and it'll take you straight to the page.
Okay. Go ahead.
And I'm going to read it nonetheless. On page 27, FBI national background check. So home builders home improvement contractors, they're going to have to pass an FBI background check. That's good. That's a good thing. One consideration, and I'm actually thinking of it very personally, because I have my handyman. He's a young guy in his mid-30s. He made some mistakes when he was young. He screwed around with drugs. He's got a felony conviction for it. But he's walking the straight road. He's a good kid. There is an appeal process in Section 10, and there's a lot of discretion that goes into Roy's, that goes to Roy for things like this. So just something to consider is just an appeal process maybe in place for those who might fail FBI background check. How do you quantify that, and what are the merits for waiver, for example? That's something that might need to be delved into by a certain body of people at some point. On page 45, it's actually a continuation of page 44. You get down where it says number 3 under B3. B3, it reads general liability and insurance, what Mr. Jambor was just speaking to. Having a requirement to have these general contractors as well as subcontractors insured, even if it is just errors and omission, regardless, it's going to weed out a lot of people that maybe we don't want working on our homes anyway. So that's not a bad thing, in my opinion. You're going to get more credible contractors are the ones who can afford the insurance. On page 46, section HI, or excuse me, not HI, forgive me, section I. This kind of ties into a page coming in a minute, but registrations are not transferable. That is really good. The reason that's good is what these subcontractors will do, or not the subcontractors, but like general contractors, is they will go and screw a bunch of people, get all these liens, cause all these problems, then they file bankruptcy, and then they just reopen under another name. Or they'll have multiple DBAs that they're operating under. So this will help to address that. And same thing with number 8 under J8 on the same page 46. Permit any construction work covered by this section to be performed by any person not properly registered while in control of premises covered by this property. What this basically means is, if they've got shell companies, it's not gonna fly. Roy can shut them down.
And there, Paul, there are a lot of contractors doing business with shell companies around
that's
here.
Exactly right. They've got mom who's doesn't know anything about construction listed as the president of the company, and they've got the son acting as the CEO, and they are now an employee of the company because they had to bankrupt the other company and divest all the assets out of it and put them in family members' names. So now they got the other. Anyway, that addresses that. On page 47, on page 47, number 2, just toward the top half of the page, number 2, the building official shall have the right to investigate and examine the qualifications and fitness of an applicant. Upon receipt of an application, the building official shall conduct a criminal background check on the applicant or any person responsible for the application. It goes on. When you get down to item, this is actually K2 is what this is from page 46, but it's number 2. So that's good. Number 3, right below it, item C, the building official is satisfied with the person's honesty, integrity, and trustworthiness based on information supplied and discovered in connection with the application. This gives Roy a lot of discretion on approving these people. If he suspects baloney and games and shell companies and stuff, he can move on it. And the only thing I might add to this, and it kind of ties into page 48, but where if you, okay, I know, forgive me for jumping around, I'm a little sleepy here, but go to page 48 and look at section O on page 48. Find it. That's my notes. I'm just finding it myself.
Cancellation and suspension of registration appeals.
What it does is it gets into, I'm sorry, it's F. Page 48, section 2, subsection F. Upon judicial determination of an abandonment or willful failure to perform any residential contract or project is undertaken by a registered contractor, or willful deviation from a disregard of plans or specifications in any material respect. In other words, if they're ignoring the plans and building a driveway the way it shouldn't be built, if they're building a home 6 feet too high, if they're ignoring stuff, if they're not building on their plans, and there's a judicial determination of that, their license is pulled. The only thing I would add to this, that I would submit that you guys should add to this, is civil, like we have the FBI background check, judicial determinations pertaining to those items listed in F, G, and H is civil. So you've got a guy who can pass a criminal background check, but when you start researching him on the Secretary of State's website, what you find is he's got all these judgments against him out there because he's been screwing people. Excuse my choice of words. He's been causing harm, and he's incurred a lot of civil judgments. I think that Roy should be able to have the discretion to refuse approving an application or the ability to cancel one if it's discovered that this person has a bunch of civil judgments out there in their line of work. And again, on those same listings there's also items K, L, and M. If you can read that real quick, it's the same thing. It just addresses the whole shell game issue. And lastly, on page 49, section R, contractor limitations on multiple business affiliations. Again, germane to ensuring that we don't have these guys starting shell companies, multiple companies, playing games. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, you're right, Paul, because there are contractors out here who have gone bankrupt, okay, and then created shell companies in their wife's name or their son's name, and now they're technically an employee of that company, and they're still doing what they were doing before.
If you guys pass this, the only thing that I think maybe should be Roy and Aaron could work on some language. I don't know which body, what step in the process that's done. But if it's something that you guys would like to see, or another appropriate body would like to see, and Roy would like to see it, I really think adding in the ability to make determinations based on civil judgments out there and other lawsuits. In other words, it not being limited to criminal.
This gives Roy a lot of leeway.
Not getting convicted.
Yeah, this gives Roy a lot of leeway, and I think he needs to have that leeway.
And you know what he can do with this is where this stuff is found on the civil side, he can shut those, as soon as this becomes an ordinance, he can shut them down tomorrow. That's it.
Okay.
Done.
All right. I appreciate your contribution.
Thank you very much.
All very good points. I've misplaced my agenda. Excuse me for a minute. There's so much paper here, I can't keep up with it.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, while you're looking for your paper, I did forget to say one thing. I promise it's just 20 seconds.
Okay, go ahead.
On page 71, for the desired application procedural changes, on the very first paragraph, the only thing I might suggest adding into that paragraph is requiring that the homeowner's phone and email address should be added also. The homeowner's phone and email address be added also. Page 71, first paragraph.
Yeah, that's actually, I don't know that we have that requirement, but it's on our form in the MPN. We collect that information. I don't know that there's anything in our ordinance that says you must do that, but we do ask for it.
How did I do, Roy?
Fine. That's
Okay.
good. Good comments.
Did I hear
Scott.
somebody want to speak? Yeah. Okay, Howard,
Scott,
go ahead.
I agree with this whole thing on San Antonio. I think Roy needs to have the discretion to do some of the things that are in here, like Paul pointed out, because we do have, and Arch has even mentioned that we have some bad actors, okay, that are developers here. And I think Roy needs this as an ordinance in order to give him the discretion that he needs in order to stop some of these bad actors.
Yeah.
That's the whole part of this discussion. And obviously, we're going to have to get down to brass tacks, take a look at it, and make comments on the content and add what we feel needs to be added. And
Mr. Chair, what the staff would love now that we, the purpose of this was to, find a framework that you guys liked enough for us to use as the basis of a draft. And what we'd like to do is take that one that you like and start marking it up and working on an ordinance. Next committee meeting, up to you, however you want to do it. And start.
So did I understand you to say that the city would like to take a shot at it first?
Yes, sir, and bring it to the subcommittee. But what we were looking for is for you guys to tell us, that you liked one of these approaches and you want us to follow it.
Scott, I would like to ask Paul if he's willing to work with the city to enhance, shall we say, the wording in places where he thinks it needs to be enhanced, and that way he can tell the city why, because he's obviously looked at this a lot more than I have.
Howard, I
think I can do that as a
wait. I don't think it's our place to recommend that. I think it's up to Roy. If he would like this listed, he can ask for it.
Well, and absolutely. I would welcome Mr. Roberts, just, and I can send him a copy if he wants one that he can mark up just to the San Antonio and just highlight it and make comments on it for me. That would help.
I'd be delighted, Roy.
No sweat. I'll send you one.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess you'll let us know, Roy, whether you have something you want us to look at.
Yeah, and if you'll be thinking about a date, and let's get the other lady taken care of, and then we'll do a subcommittee. And,
okay.
And maybe do this and the next agenda item all at once, I hope, at the meeting.
That sounds good. Sounds good to me. The next agenda item is the amended list of proposed inspection requirements and permitting requirements.
Yeah, and this is, once we are sure this list is complete and you guys are happy with everything we have on it, and things like Mr. Roberts wanting that added, that's what we're looking for. Once we have that, I think we need to give Aaron some homework and give us a guideline about which one of these has to be in an ordinance and which one can be in a published policy that's referenced in an ordinance.
I have a couple of questions that I came up with. If you allow me to ask those
Absolutely.
questions. In a portion that addresses site plan, which I think is on like page 3 or 4, page 4, if you include the title page,
Yes, sir.
bottom of the page, site plan,
I'm there now.
talks about the roof's highest point. Is a chimney included in that?
No, sir, it's not in our current ordinances. It refers to that as an appenditure.
Okay.
Appenditures are not included.
Next question I have is on the next page under erosion control and landscape. And I think you know what my question is going to be. It has to do with xeriscaping.
Right.
I don't see anything about that.
Well, that's already in the ordinance. That's, you know, they've got to use the big aggregate now. That's already covered. We're just, what we're talking about is they need to show us the plans for that.
Okay.
This is what this is about, to add the kind of detail so that we quit having to explain people what a permit application is supposed to look like. They keep wondering why we don't know what's in their mind or read their minds or whatever for stuff that they don't draw.
How is this going to be protected for them?
I'm sorry, I missed some of what you said.
How will this information be presented to the contractor or the homeowner?
Well, that's what I was getting about. That's what I was getting about with Aaron. You know, how much of it needs to be in a policy that we publish and how much of it needs to be in an ordinance.
I see.
That's kind of what we're getting at. What I'm used to is that it references a set of inspections or procedures, and those are in the ordinance, but they're published so that every time we change, you know, half a sentence, we don't have to go back to council to make that change.
So this would be separate from the code.
Well, that's what we're dependent on Aaron to tell us. Which one is which? But we would like not to have all of it in the ordinance if possible.
All right.
Yeah.
So Aaron, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, you know, looking at this list, you know, for example, if you look at the minimum required residential permit application documentation, most of this is all going to be in a design criteria or design checklist or a permit checklist that is you know, the ordinance would say must comply with all of the items listed in the permit checklist adopted as of a certain date or as revised. And then this is the permit checklist. And if we find that we're missing something, we can add and change that over time. But the basic tenets, the survey, site development agreement, there may be the big pieces that are really more appropriate to include in the ordinance itself. But the details of how you do it should not be in the ordinance. It should be in some type of guidance document that we say you must comply with the guidance document.
Okay.
And so that's my goal, is to kind of help ferret through which of these things rise to the level of need to be noted, addressed specifically in the ordinance, and then where most of this stuff can actually be referenced in some kind of guidance document or checklist or, you know, something else that for which the staff have more latitude to amend as that need arises, because it's really kind of the nuts and bolts or process part of it that doesn't directly impact someone's procedural rights, their legal rights. That's really where you have to include it in the ordinance. If it's going to impact their legal rights or procedural rights, you got to include it in the ordinance. Otherwise, it's really just something that can go in a guidance document. And so that's where we'll kind of pull those apart, bring it back to you and say, okay, here's what we think needs to go in the ordinance draft, and then here's what the guidance document would say, and give you an opportunity to look at it and see if there's something in particular that you want to wordsmith it, or, you know.
Well,
if-
and
Okay.
that's the main thing we're looking for is for you guys to tell us if we left something off this list that you
Right.
think needs to be on there. Or if we put something on there you hate and want us to take it off.
All right, anybody have comments they'd like to make? All right, well, we can certainly do that when you're ready. Okay, you'll let us know, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
What I could do is, collect the comments, whether you want us to add to it or take it away. And then after a period of time, just schedule it for a committee meeting and let Aaron have enough time to do that homework before the committee meeting.
Okay. I guess each of us can make our comments and send them individually to you.
That will work.
All right? Okay. If there are no other comments on that item of the agenda, we'll move on to number 5, which is the list of regulations, standards, definitions, and requirements concerning chapters 3 and 14. I hope everybody's reviewed that as well. Anyone have comments or questions? I have some. The very first line, it talks about the applicant, and I assume that that's the applicant of the permit. I don't know if that needs to be defined or not, but it wasn't clear to me. I made the assumption.
And yes, sir. And I'll be honest with you, the whole purpose here was to identify exactly what ordinances are covered twice. Whether they're good ordinances or bad ordinances, and where it ought to be taken out of, that's what happens next. But we needed to start with the comprehensive list of what was in there twice. And that's where we are today. That's all we've done.
Okay. I don't see any hands raised for comments.
Yeah, Roy, do I understand that you're saying that these are just duplicate provisions that are in both chapters, not necessarily conflicts?
Well,
This is just where the same language is used
correct.
and addressed in both?
There may be conflicts, there may be slight inconsistencies. They may be identical, but they're in there twice. And even when it does no harm, at best you should cross-reference. You follow me? I think we were, those of us, Mr. Kaysen, for example, we were working on the comprehensive master plan, and there was a section that was in 2 different divisions. You don't repeat it, you just say, see this other section. And that way, if you amend it, you don't have to worry about it getting screwed up, which is how I think we got here. You follow?
Well, a minute. It seems like the low-hanging fruit in this, if we've got duplication where the language is exactly the same, we just need to decide which chapter it belongs in. We really don't have to make any business evaluation of that at this point. Is that right?
And we'll need some more homework from Aaron in that regard. Which of these are just absolutely have to be zoning ordinances and which ones are okay to be, somewhat discretionary, if you will.
So will it be Aaron's decision as to which chapter will be revised?
Well, there'll be some legal research. I don't know if it'll be her decision. We certainly need her input. If the courts treat this as a zoning ordinance and apply these standards, for applying the zoning law, it's not a good idea for us to ignore that.
Okay.
And I'm speaking for Aaron.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Chairman, one of the things is if they're looking at this and the variance requirements would be applied, if you want to vary from this, the standard for getting a variance is different than the standard for, say, a special exception or something else. And so I want to look at what legal requirements, what standard applies if you want to deviate from something like this, because that's really where you're going to see a court case on that issue. Now, that being said, there's not going to be a ton of case law, but there will likely be some that'll give guidance, and that way I'll just provide that information to you so that you have it. I'm not the decision maker. You guys get paid the quote unquote big bucks. So you have to make the final call, but I'll give you something to go from.
Well, in some situations, we're going to have, we have two commissions involved. And one commission may say, you need to take it out of yours. And they may say, no, you have to take it out of yours. How does that get resolved?
So if there's not something that's there's been a clear legal determination regarding what, whether it's impetus, how it was developed, why it exists, or how it's treated by a court, then I think we just need to lay out some logical rationale for why it fits better, say, as a building standard versus as a zoning, because there are pretty clear demarcations typically on, when you're looking at something from a zoning perspective versus something strictly from a building nuts and bolts viewpoint. I think we'll be able to ferret through this. I think we'll be able to divide them up, or at least you'll come to a meeting of the minds. I don't feel like we're headed for a turf war.
Howard, you have a question?
I think the answer to your question, Roy, correct me, Aaron, if I'm wrong, is that if the P&Z says take it out of your section and we say, no, you take it out of your section, Aaron is the one that has the final decision and says it'll come out of this section, and that's the end of the discussion.
Well, we should certainly want to know her opinion before we have that argument.
I'll make a recommendation, but I'm not going to be the final decision maker. That's really not my spot. But I'll have a recommendation for you with a rationale, and
hopefully some legal research behind it.
Yes.
And typically it'll be the courts have treated this as a zoning ordinance.
Exactly.
Keep it that way, or it's probably you might regret it if you don't. Those are the kind of things that should guide you, and she knows how to do that work.
I would be surprised if either commission wanted to overrule Aaron's advice on where the language belongs.
No, I think we'll take her recommendation quite seriously. Okay, is there more to be said on this item on the agenda? If not,
where we were in the process.
Say again, Roy.
We just wanted you to know where we are in the process. And
we appreciate that. And we'll help as much as we can, as long as we know what you need. Item 6 is the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the last meeting, the meeting of March 3rd. Has everyone reviewed the minutes? And do they have any comments, questions, or corrections? I'd like a motion, please.
Motion to approve. The minutes as
Again?
they're written.
Second.
We approve the minutes as they're written.
Howard seconds it.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, we have a motion and second. All those in favor, Howard, have a discussion? Are you voting? I haven't asked for your vote yet. Okay, we have a motion and second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand so I can see it. The motion's approved. The minutes are approved as read or
Hey,
submitted.
Scott, this is
Did
Howard.
it be the right hand?
Before you adjourn, I'd like to tell everybody my email has changed. I'm HHOWIEJR23@gmail.com. So if you're trying to get a hold of me, it's no longer HHowieJr@live. It's HHowieJr23@gmail.com.
Okay.
And the only reason for that was my other email was hacked, and I don't want to take a chance of anybody getting into stuff that they don't belong in.
We understand that. And before we go to future agenda items, Arch, do you have anything you'd like to say? Still there, Arch? If not, we'll,
Mr. Casey may have some. I think he came away from a meeting with homework to tell you about it.
oh, okay.
I don't know that we have the list, but I think he will have a list for you at some point.
Yeah, we have a list of amendments we need to make to various ordinances. And, the master plan committee came up with the list. Our task immediately is to prioritize control.
All right, what is your list?
What he's getting at, I think, is it needs to be an agenda. We'll present the list, the future agenda.
Is that future items to be considered?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
So you're telling me that we need to have an agenda item to discuss the list and assign priorities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we don't have any idea what those priorities are, so that we can act on them.
I think some of them are what we discussed tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. I would think from discussions with Jim Payson in the past, he has a recommendation for an agenda item to review the dark skies ordinance, or make an amendment to it. Is that correct, Jim?
Yeah, that's pretty low priority.
It didn't seem that way when you and I discussed it, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, that's good. Because I had been contacted by a local resident who was very concerned, but I guess it's died down because we didn't do anything and I haven't heard anything else.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we get a lot of folks that think it regulates the light output, and to an extent it does in terms of what has to be permitted. But, if they're full cutoff fixtures, then it's not limited, and people think it is. I had one citizen email me, said, oh, we bought a light meter, and that has nothing to do with the ordinance at all.
Now, her concern was a person could buy a dark skies compliant house that had dark sky compliant fixtures. Then they could go out there and change them out. And there was nothing in the ordinance that precluded them from doing that.
I'm sorry, I missed part of what you said. Do what after they bought it?
Then go out and change out the compliant fixtures, put in non-compliant fixtures. And they didn't specifically address that. Now, Arch says, well, it does because you have to have a permit to change out those light fixtures. And if you have to permit it, then you have to be compliant.
Right.
So I guess that's, do you really have to have a permit to change out your light fixtures?
You do they could change them out one at a time. That's the only real thing they could do.
Yeah.
We got a guy that we cited for doing more than that without a permit. And he really did not comply.
Anyway, that was the gist of the.
Right. But we do depend on the complaint to find those, you know, like the stuff on Sundays. If we don't have the citizens help us find those, we got no shot at it. We don't inspect at night.
Yeah.
So we need the help. We really do.
I really think, Scott, that, you know, we've got enough to do that we don't need to put that on the agenda right now. We just keep it in mind, and when things die down a little bit, we'll look at it.
Well, and along those lines, and is Mr. Davila and I had the opportunity to suggest, you know, some outreach on dark skies, which is really part of the problem, is educating people how it works and what's in it so they can help spot violations and help us, you know, get people to comply. And I don't know if it's going to do any good, but somebody gave us a chance and we asked for that. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's on our minds. I'll put it to you that way.
Okay, back to agenda items. Is this the only agenda item that we have to suggest at the moment? I guess we have until Thursday before the next meeting to come up with others. Any comments? Is there any other discussion we need to have at this point? Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
Who was that? Gabe? Oh, Jim? Second, who?
Jim second, and Gage made the motion.
Okay. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting at 8:41, raise their hand. I'm still not sure. Maybe Aaron, you can clarify. It passed incidentally. Do we need a motion to adjourn, Aaron?
Mr. Chairman, you want a motion to adjourn, but if the quicker way is to ask for a motion to adjourn, you get the motion. If you ask, you know, any opposed, and typically, usually there's not one. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned at 8:41. You can make it that quick. You don't really need a vote unless there's an opposition.
All right, fine. Well, thank all of you for participating tonight. And Howard, what do you need, Howard? Are you saying waving bye-bye?
I'm just waving bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Isn't there a quicker way to do that with just one finger?
I didn't, oh, wow, no, we don't.
These are recorded, gentlemen. Good night.
I saw that we had a member of the public that chimed in but didn't say anything. So you never know. So let's be very cordial and appropriate. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.